Good afternoon, Architect Augustus.
Good afternoon. How are you, my dear?
I'm very fine. In fact, it's a pleasure. Like, I've been dreaming meeting you. Like, wow,
Wow.
I can't believe it.
Wow. It's my pleasure to be here. It's always good to be back to
The roots.
to the cradle.
So, my first question is, how did you develop your architectural identity, and what advice do you have for students struggling with this?
When you come into architecture school, you are new at this. It's unlike anything else. And you have to sort of discover yourself. And one of the ways to make that discovery is to learn about architects, and to learn about their approaches to the work. I think that is very important for any architecture student wanting to find their identity, because there's nothing new under the sun. It's either a remix or something of the sort, and that all we do is inspiration over time, over the centuries. Everything that we've done comes out of inspiration. So studying about the various architects, Renzo Piano, Norman Foster, studying about Zaha Hadid the late, studying about David Ajay, studying about Francis Carré. It shows you how the forebears have done it. And it helps you to find your place. Studying Bauhaus, studying Nice, studying so many things lets you know where you align. So finding your identity for me is more about discovering who you are and what you believe. Because remember, we are architects, but in architecture's definition, there is art and science. So there's an artistic side to what we do. And that's where you sort of look to find who you are and where you align. So you may find out that your identity is a multiplicity of other people who've led you. That maybe you are sympathetic to the works of Tadao Ando. And as you go along, you begin to now create your philosophy. And this is very important. So for me as a student, that was the path. I must say I haven't totally finished finding my identity, even though I'm very clear about what I'm about, and what my work is about and should be about. But as I grow, it continues to get added onto. So I think for students, reading a lot helps. As a student, not many people have the money to travel, but they can travel.
Through the internet.
Yes, absolutely. They can travel through the internet, they can travel through micro learning. Today, in your era, not in our time, the speed of the mobile phone is powerful. And you're able to read on Art Daily and other.
Back insights as well.
Absolutely. You're able to read what's going on around the world. So that way you get to travel. You don't have to travel physically. I got to travel to a lot of the places I had studied about. For example, Berlin. I'd read a whole book about Berlin, and visiting it was phenomenal. And I knew where to go and what to look out for. So you can travel that way, where you travel through the books, because as a student, not everybody has the resources to do that. But you can travel, and I think it helps to build your imagination. So those are the parts in trying to find out who am I and what am I going to give to this world. You don't have to copy what's in the past. You have to sort of take it and look at where we are now and project into a future. So this is how you find yourself.
Okay. So, my second question is, what was the biggest lesson you learned when transitioning from school to practice?
Hmm. I received a shock when I finished tech. You sort of have a chip on your shoulder, but I believe for me particularly, I've been guided a lot.
Okay.
When I say guided, it's because I always talk to those ahead of me. And one of the things that I learned very early was not to be pompous about what I knew. It's very easy to finish here with a first class or be the best student in the class and go out there and think you know everything. You actually don't. I remember for me, the first office after school I worked in fact, I interned in quite a number of offices, and each one of them I learned something. very important. I can go into that. But the one that's most critical was choosing the office I wanted to work in. Richard, Robert Hayford, computer aided designers. The company was called Richard. It's still there. And I thought I could design space. And Robert wanted me on there to try my hands at design. And I remember I always tell the story. When I did, he had a project, asked me to take the brief and to sketch, think out what I could do. And I drew and he drew. And then we brought the two together to run a crate in the office. When he saw my drawing, he just took the sheet and tore it into two.
You don't say.
And I was like, oh. And then he brought out his sketch. And he said, Infanti, Papa, konoko draw, as in, go and draw this one.
Yeah.
So I went to my office and I looked at his drawing and I sat there, took my drawing that he's turned into two, put it together again, tore it into further pieces.
Crazy.
Yeah, that was my first intro to a senior architect, giving you the opportunity to design. Why did I do that? Because I could see so much lack of thinking, wastage in the design. So the big shock was just realizing how, in school you are dreaming and you are playing with forms, but in the real world where people are dealing with budgets and reality, school must be like that. School must leave you to dream. But when you come out, you will soon realize that there's a very harsh line between getting things built and just dreaming. So I think that was the biggest shock coming out of school, but one that I embraced and tried to refine to be able to now design things that were cost effective and still very innovative. So that was for me.
What are the most important skills young architects should focus on beyond what's taught in school?
In school, understanding the software is critical in today's world. Why? Because when you come out, you are not going to be your own lead designer when you come out. You are going to work with, and when you finish school, you finished technically what the RIBA call part 2. And you have to, understudy an architect and then write your exam to become a fully fledged architect who handles projects. So you are not coming out to become the lead architect in somebody's firm. So you must sort of be the Robin to a Batman. So the main architect is the Batman and you are the Robin. And if you watch it, well, not a sidekick really. Robin is not really a sidekick. He's a very important person to the main architect. And I would say the other day I was discussing with the Secretary of Architects, Architect who came here just with the visitation of the Ghana Institute of Architects. And we were discussing how it's been a while since we ever used CAD or anything like that.
The software.
Yeah, we have no time. We are sketching and thinking. So if you have a strong ability to deliver the work, to do the drawings, to do the technical work, to build models, you are a great asset. So let's focus on what's at school. But your question focuses on the skills outside school. I think for me, students must learn to socialize, architecture students particularly. I know it's difficult because it never gives us the chance to socialize when we're in school. The work is just so demanding.
Overwhelming.
But if I had a chance to be back in KNUST, I would have partied a lot more. Why? Because your work is based on your network. The amount of people you know, the discussions, and not just the work as in receiving work, but also the work as in working in teams. So how many structural engineers do you know as a student? How many artists do you know? How many electrical engineers do you know? Once you build that base, when you come out, it gets a lot easier for you. And I feel that is something that socializing is really critical for the student. I would say it's maybe the lifeblood of your whole enterprise.
There's this notion that architecture students are too known and we keep to ourselves.
No, I don't think we are too known. At least in my time, nobody thought that we're too known. I think maybe a lot of people will feel that way because the grades that makes you enter architecture school are really high. So normally you are top of the class. in your field.
Okay.
But it's not because architecture students are too low. It's because the studio, if you are really working, really takes your soul and you are very immersed, and it's something that is okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think that if I had to give the advice now, I think students of architecture must really fraternize, because your clients are out there. The people, you forget that you are actually an industry and you are a marketer of your own self. So if you are somebody who is not very good with people, then you are planning to be, which is not wrong, you are planning to be the battery in the clock in an architecture office. You know, in a clock, you can see the arms moving, but you never see the battery.
So like behind the scenes.
True. It's not a bad place to be. You can be in the right systems. But if you really want to be out there, then for an architect, you should really socialize. It will help. It will help in business. I think one of the things we should also, beyond fraternization, is to study a bit of finance and business.
Okay.
In this modern era, it's very important. And especially in Africa, where people don't actually even understand what architects are, and we are still trying to educate the public on this. So I think it is important that you learn to socialize, and you also learn a bit about business and finance and how projects get financed and all of that. I think that will help you on your path.
Okay. Here we talk about architecture in Ghana and cultural identity. So, how do you successfully integrate Ghanaian culture into modern architecture without it being feeling forced?
Okay, I first of all, the question is what is Ghanaian culture, or what is culture? Culture, we understand, is dynamic, is it not?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So, unfortunately, I think quite a number of people try to marginalize Africans, just generally. Whereas I don't see that marginalization in the reverse. So nobody tries to marginalize a European. Nobody tries to marginalize a European. But in Africa, we are trying to marginalize the expectation of what is African. All right. I think that we have cultures, and culture is dynamic. Today, when you take any Ghanaian child, you'll be wrong to think that they were born in a village somewhere, they lived in a hut, and therefore when they come to school, everything they design must be in mud, earth, and brick. I beg to differ.
Okay.
There are a lot of your mates here who've had very interesting backgrounds. Somebody was born in the UK, schooled to a point, came back to Ghana because their parents were diplomats. They were returned back home. They went to school, Achimota School. They are in KNUST studying now. Maybe every holiday, because the family is large, they travel. How do you reconcile that in the modern time? This is the question we must ask. How do you reconcile that? So it's really about the dynamism of your culture, everything that you've studied, and how you begin to apply that to your space and what you understand. I do believe that we must study what our past is, and I believe through history you get to understand. But remember, we are in the area of creativity, and we're trying to define a future with a respect for the past. The question is, how do we do that? I don't particularly subscribe in my work to, like I said, expectations of African expression. I try to take the discussion into a future to talk about what I also believe. And I hope in the lecture I will expose to my work, which I'll share, 3 works that I'll share, that I've managed, I've worked with teams on to share where my thinkings are.
Okay.
But I believe that we are sophisticated people, which is very true, and that we must define a future. What we are doing now is defining a future, 100-year, 200-year future. We need to have people look back and say, wow, these were great thinkers. And I think that's what architecture is about. So I'm not, I'm sorry to disappoint, but I'm not interested in architecture that makes us stick in the past. I'm interested in an architecture that makes us look forward.
That's cool. And the last question is, what is one piece of advice you wish you had received as a student?
One piece of advice I wish I had received as a student. That was a hard one. And it's hard to answer this because I think I had a lot of good advice as a student. But one piece of advice I wish I was given as a student.
Or you wish would be given to us?
I think that you have to be passionate about what you are doing. Now let me explain. Not everybody in your class is architecture is a multifaceted course. There are people who will be project managers amongst you. There are people who will be construction managers or contract managers amongst you. There are people who will be contractors amongst you because of the various interests. I think if it had been made clear when we were in school that that was what it was, a lot of people would not have chased the wind for too long. So you would have focused. For example, I have classmates who did architecture for 6 years and found a great passion in baking cakes, and they are the best at it. I have friends who have baked cakes for presidents and sat with presidents, and it wasn't architecture that. But of course, the truth is what they learned in architecture, that multidisciplinary approach gave them opportunity so that any level of design, they approach it a certain way. This is why they are so sought after. But my question is, do I have to do a whole 6 years to end up in that place? Why not use my time more fruitfully to go to the matter? So I think my advice is knowing yourself very early. I know a lot of people, unfortunately, live till they are 30 and they will tell you they don't even know what they want to do with themselves. The late Steve Jobs said something in one of his, I think in his book, that it's better to spend 3 months figuring out what you want to do than waste time in school learning what you don't want to do. So I think it's important to be clear what you want to do, and which part you're going to go to, and therefore work around that particular role, and have your mentors in that place so that you can build towards that place. You need to know what you want to do. So I wish for most of you, since the question is now turned that way, that you are particular about where you want to go career wise, what your interests are, and give it the right energy. Because there really isn't any time. I mean, today I'm here to give a lecture, but I was just here it feels like a year ago.
Wow.
Time does fly and there's no time. So you must know what you want to do and give it all the energy that you can. And I think that we will all be successful and live more fulfilled lives than the kind of frustrating lives that people will have to go through. So this is what I think maybe I wish, I would have known, or that students will know very early in the course that this is the path and I'm going to stick with it. And be happy with what comes with it.
That's awesome. Like, I mean, oh, wise words.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that will be all for the first session.
That's fine.
Thank you
I
so
look
much.
forward to the second session.
Me too.